woodpecker species. 23 different species across North America, ranging from only a few inches in height to over a foot. The most common ones that we're going to be discussing today are the nuisance ones dealt with pileated, downy, and hairy woodpeckers. Of course, you'll get some red-headed, yellow-bellied, red-breasted acorns and northern flickers as well, but the most common one nationally are going to be pileated, downy, and hairy. Knowing your species in your particular area. Are you in a more mountainous region? Are you in the cities, in the suburbs, in the country? That's going to affect the different species in your territories. Mating and laying eggs traditionally is going to be every spring, regardless of the territory that you're in. Territorial, all woodpeckers are territorial. They're all going to be making mating calls, pecking on the trees surrounding, pecking on the houses surrounding, and they're all cavity nesters as well. So regardless what region you're in, this is going to be the same information. Let's start with the most common one that everybody knows and sees is pileated. Now in the cities and large suburban areas around there where there's not as many trees, you're not going to see these species around as much. You're going to see more downies and hairies, but they will become prevalent. Areas with tall chimneys, any places where they may have done logging recently within the past 5 years, you'll still have them around that territory, but still pecking on trees, but more so living inside of houses and structures compared to living inside of the dead trees. This is currently the tallest woodpecker that we have, excluding, of course, the ivory-billed, which was believed to be extinct, I believe, in the 60s. But they have it on the critically endangered list, as is the imperial woodpecker as well. Both of those similar in stature and physical characteristics to the pileated, but slightly larger. Same goes for most woodpeckers, that they have the bright red heads. The young in these can fly roughly a month after hatching. During the fledgling period, incubation is around 18 days. So bring us to the downy woodpecker. This one's very common. People typically get the downy and the hairy mixed up. Why is this important in our line of work? Is because if you need to get a depredation permit from your DNR and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, you will have to be able to identify properly what species of woodpecker it is, male, female, how many, before they issue the permit, because they're going to issue it for this particular bird or birds. If you get it wrong and you have the DNR person show up with your permit and you get the wrong bird, that's not going to reflect good on you or your company, and ultimately be bad for your client as well. So the same for downy and hairies will be the black and white spots, similar type of head markings, but the telltale difference is not only this beak here is smaller than the circumference of this head compared to the hairy that you'll see momentarily, where the beak protrudes out farther, roughly the same size of the head, if not a little longer, and the body style itself is smaller than. Thus the hairy woodpecker. So as you can see where the beak is throughout here, much longer. Body is a little more stout, but from a distance and at a glance, you'll be able to see that the beak sticks out farther. This one also breeds February through June. Again, roughly most of these woodpeckers, as far as the incubation and the fledgling period, about a month, month and a half. So when explaining to clients, whether you're using physical deterrence, harassing techniques, visual deterrence, or if you do happen to have a depredation permit, certain things are best to wait during the spring. You have to inform your clients that if there's eggs and fledglings inside of these nests, they're not going to leave. You can put all the deterrents up you want. There's eggs and fledglings inside there, they're not going to leave. Protected species. Woodpeckers are a native species. They're indigenous. A majority of indigenous birds in North America are protected underneath the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, 1918. This is just some basics of the Protected Species Acts. Going further into depth, educating yourself, possibly going to a NACOA bird training course or similar, is going to go more into great detail about these things. Like said before, I rebuild imperial woodpecker, those ones believed to be extinct. Everybody wants the pretty feathers, regardless species of birds. This is why they're on the list. You can obtain the depredation permit. We're not going to get into great detail with this module today, because that's a last resort. This is why certain things are on endangered and species lists. The imperial woodpecker and the ivory-billed. What does protected mean? You cannot kill them, take any part thereof, sell them, unless you get your proper forms and requirements for a depredation permit. It'll say directly on there what you can and cannot do, what species you can and cannot take, how many of said species, the sex of the species. You can, however, use scare devices, deterrents, etc., to get them away from an area, to scare them away from an area, to move them, but you cannot trap or shoot or harm the birds in any way. So why are they a nuisance? Obviously, big giant holes, whether it's big, small, driving people insane from the moment the sun goes up until the sun comes down, all throughout. Now, 2 times of the year that, regardless of the region you're in, you'll end up getting more woodpecker calls than not are going to be in the spring for about a month or 2, and then again in the fall. Especially in the colder climates like in Minnesota up here, you're going to have them pecking and trying to find cavities to hang out in. Some species will have multiple nesting materials, nesting sites, but it all comes down to these 2 things: noise and damage. People don't want to hear it. People don't want their property damaged. Primarily, you're going to be dealing with residential. You will have some commercial, but it's not going to be as prevalent as residential is. And once we get into the photos of the damage, you'll see, obviously, primarily it's going to be wood structures that are going to be damaged and beat up on, compared to stucco, drive-it, EFIS, fake foam board. And not only will it be high, but it'll be low as well, especially if they're foraging for food. So if they're foraging for food, like carpenter ants, carpenter beetles, they can go high, they can go low. In nature, they're going to be going towards the dead or dying trees of a brown, blackish nature. So any structures that typically are darker in color to their surroundings mimic dead or dying trees. What do they find there? They find bugs. They want to eat the bugs. Now, needless to say, I haven't done my share of white and yellow houses throughout the years. Carpenter bees way up high, so top to bottom, all the way around. When you're out at a client's property looking to see the damage so you can assess the areas and give them the proper quotation and what do you need to do as an operator to solve this problem. Don't just look high, look low and in between everywhere around the structure. And that's going to affect your bid, and you'll be able to charge several different line items on there for it. If you need to get rid of the food, along with patching of the holes, along with installing deterrents and putting a program on that. Sometimes if caught early enough, you can get by with just treating the areas, say it's carpenter bees in the south region, dust or whatever you use for your carpenter bees there, and then come by later and fill in the holes and put up deterrents. Could be once and done, but now you have that residual income coming in every whenever to dust and treat for the carpenter bees, carpenter ants, whatever it is. and move the deterrents around, which we'll get into more in some of these other slides. Secondary type of damage is going to be territorial and mating. The drumming, the noises, it allows that woodpecker to tell others, this is my spot, this is my territory. Obviously, other times of the year, it's going to be mating to let people know I'm available, here I am, let's do the thing. Domicile, pecking to make their home. Again, some woodpeckers in different regions will have several places to nest in the wintertime. Also, like the acorn woodpecker will store acorns in a wall cavity, come back later to feed on it. Foraging for food. Now, as you can see, this rake board going up and down the siding, see all the little holes in there from carpenter bees. They came and bored up in there, and then because they smelled or seen the carpenter bees, they then come peck all along the side. It's not large gaping holes, just big enough to get their beak in there to pull out the larva, trying to eat the larva of the bees. Some different areas, it'll be ants, termites, beetles, etc. If you see that, obviously you have an underlying issue where you're going to have to treat the area or replace the wood, along with how are you going to prevent it from happening again in the future. This particular area, I believe I have a photo coming up in a couple slides to where we wrap it in metal. Wrapping it in metal is going to stop. Now, would they still come back if it was a territorial dominance and they just wanted to hear the pecking noises? Yes, that's a feasible possibility. If you didn't put up any deterrents along with it, and you just took care of the problem at hand, but you didn't do anything for the foreseeable future, they could come back just to peck and make noise on it. You'll see this often with rain pan chimney caps that are metal. Is there food in there? No. Are they nesting in there? No. They're just coming for territorial dominance. So being able to identify what type of peck marks are on here is going to help you out in the long run. So this territorial and mating pecking is just for sound resonance. You know, it doesn't look like necessarily this tree is dead because you can see the light color fibers behind the bark, but that's just them pecking on it. Pick a spot, it's like a bongo. They're pecking on it. They're letting them know I'm here. Domicile creation. Again, typically in the fall, getting ready for winter, at least up in this region. It can be year round, especially let's say that you did a program for the Joneses house over here on the east side. Your program worked great. Now you just move this from the Joneses to the Smith's house over here, half a block away. Now you have the same issue. So they're going to continue to peck, finding the spot. If you can get to it soon enough and it's an easier program, you're going to be able to drive them, thus create more revenue, which is another reason you don't want to just go and obtain a depredation permit for every bird you see and kill them. If you can move them, you're taking care of that client that's yours. And now it has to go somewhere. If it happens to go right down the block and you get that call, you just won twice on the same bird. And you're not killing the bird, you're doing right by your clients. Everybody's happy. So different methods for controlling them. Now we talked about the woodpeckers, the common species, what they do. How can you control them? Again, it's a matter of either moving them away from areas, making the spot less desirable to them. And sometimes that also means fixing the underlying issues, repairing the damage, different deterrents, and several different options. People that still love them, yes, they're going to continue to feed the birds. Well, instead of feeding it directly next to the house, why don't you push it back a ways? So now we're feeding them over here and making this area more desirable than directly next to the structure that they're doing damage on if you're not going to get rid of the bird feed. So getting to the root of the issue, like I was talking about before, asking the client questions. you're going to hear some of the same things regardless where you're at, the common things. You know, I hear it on this side of the structure. It's this high up, but how long has it been an issue for? How acclimated is that bird or birds to that site? You know, if it's only been there for a week, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier and cheaper for the client for you to be able to come up with a program for that particular area to keep them away from it and move them along to another spot. And obviously, if it's only been there for a week or two, there's going to be less damage that occurred in that time frame. Now, if it's been there for, they've been battling it for a year or two, and they've been putting pie tins and CDs and Mylar and audio and hitting them with a super soaker, all these different things, you know, strobe lights, charcoal, cat pee, human hair, mothballs, everything that I've seen and heard over the years, that people, if they get it in enough time frame and they can stay on it and continue moving, maybe it's a plastic owl effigy, they may be able to come out on top. But typically people, they'll do it once, expect it that to be magic, and it's done, and it doesn't work. So you as a professional is now coming in to handle the scenario and give your clients a line item list of, this is why, this is how we're going to tackle this, this, and this. You have underlying issues of this, this, and this. Allow us to do these 3 or 4 different things in these areas, and you'll be woodpecker free on this structure, or at least on these sides of this structure, for X amount of time. Knowing what species it is, just like we covered before, the time of year. Now, if it's early spring and you know in your area they're laying eggs or they're currently fledglings and they're not volant yet, they're not able to fly yet, take that in consideration, because anything you put up during that time frame typically is not going to move a mother and father bird away from the eggs or the fledglings that are inside of the structure. I tell my clients to wait because even if I applied for a depredation permit during that time frame, in my regions, the amount of time that goes by until it gets approved and you actually have the depredation permit in your hands and you can do that job then legally, the time frame is done. They're now volant. They're now able to fly. Now we can scare out not only the mother and father woodpecker, but all the juveniles along with it, because they're able to fly just by waiting. Most people are not patient. Sometimes you have to explain it to them in the right way, or have it in writing, or have it part of your over the phone or online email sales team to explain these things to your clients prior to even showing up to start doing the initial inspection on the property. Type of damage, areas of concern, obviously. Site assessments. Step 1 is getting the phone call or email. Following up with that, setting a site assessment date. Step 2 is physically going on site to assess the damage. Now, as you can see in this photograph, the siding, this old LP siding, compressed board, composite stuff, it gets water, it swells up. Knowing your components, excuse me, knowing your components and building materials on the structure is going to help you greatly. They're just loving it right here. So what am I going to quote out for something on this site? You know, I'm going to have to get up on this roof. What's the pitch of the roof? How comfortable are my guys that are going to be doing this line of work up there? I also noticed back here, there's no Tyvek blocking water to this OSB compressed board plywood behind the siding. So I'm going to quote to take this stuff down, put some Tyvek on there, put new on it, in conjunction with probably placing some visual deterrents around here or here. Obviously this one's not cut early enough, so I'm going to probably charge a little more and expect for this program to take me a little longer than other programs. Fixing the underlying problem, just like we saw and discussed before. Are there bugs? You know, if there's bugs in this previous picture, if I go back one, if there's bugs in there, now I'd have to treat for the bugs. If I don't have a proper pest control license permit in my area, I work with other people. I prominently just do wildlife. When I have underlying issues such as carpenter bees, carpenter ants, beetles, termites, etc., I'm taking either subbing out services or handing them out. Say, okay, if you can come in at roughly this time frame and take care of this, that'll allow me to do my job more effectively and do this. That company wins, my company wins, the client wins. They don't have to do any more legwork. Problem solved. Wood rot. Are you comfortable doing wood rot? Do you know what to expect when you start taking off substrates? What's behind it? How is this framed out? What type of building materials? Is there certain code for certain things? If you're not familiar with that, again, you can either pass on it, you can hand it out to another operator, you can teach and educate yourself, or you can hire someone that does know the stuff. Bird feeders are always a big issue. People love seeing and feeding the birds. Again, explaining to the clients, sometimes they're willing to take it down, at least for the short time in the interim, maybe a month or two. Some are more willing to move them further back on the property, and some just flat out will not do it whatsoever. Are there other issues too? Like, do you have squirrels chewing all over the property? You know, if I seal up these holes, is there now a small colony of bats residing behind that siding? That last season, it was just a woodpecker. He decided he didn't like that spot and he moved over to this spot on the structure. Now you got bats hanging out there. Am I going to go ahead and just seal them up and I just seal bats inside my client's structure? No, I'm not going to do that. So now I'm line itemizing all these other potentials and thinking about the what ifs. So different deterrents. Again, as you can see that I wrote right here, do not attempt with nesting fledglings or eggs. Audio, in my experience over 16 years, not great. If you do get it to work, awesome. Most, whether it's residential or commercial, most clients do not want to hear the noise either. They're calling you because they heard the noise of the woodpeckers and it freaked them out. They want to hear, nobody wants to hear that. So even if they were as effective as I wish they were, the downside is the clients don't want to hear that either, or the neighbors. If you're in the inner city or suburbs where the houses are closer together, generally they're not going to want to hear that. Taste aversion stuff, not really that effective. You know, same thing that people spray for crows and geese, namely geese, on, say, turf ornamentals. You got to keep coming out, and it works well in conjunction with other methods as well. Visual, that's most effective. Most people and companies use visual methods, and we'll get into that in a couple slides. Physical barriers, not as typical. You know, unless you're physically replacing some siding with something more stout, this is about the only time that's going to work, unless people want to spend a lot of money and you want to spend a lot of time. So inspecting before installs. Again, can't stress it enough in the springtime. Gotta know. Just like in this photograph here, we're using a borescope camera, similar to someone checking pipes or mechanics would use, to look inside the nest, ensure that, all right, this area doesn't have nesting eggs or fledglings. This area doesn't. This area doesn't. Now I can make on my notes and document, because I just spent, maybe depending on the size of the structure, 1 to 2 hours completing the inspection process. I got to go to my next inspection. So these notes and photographs will be helpful. Sometimes we'll even place indicators inside those holes to see if they've been moved. By the time my exclusion crew comes out to do the work and install the deterrent devices, they're going to know if they haven't been moved, great. Those holes we can button up. The one over here, that's the one that's primarily being utilized. We're not going to touch that until X amount of days later when we know that they're all volant and they can fly out of the structure itself. So physical barriers, netting, not as common. I have done it. I have seen it. I have had to take some down over the entire side of a structure. Just like with any good netting program, when you're talking woodpeckers, though, obviously they peck through wood. I've had to take other operators' nets down that were touching the siding substrates. They could still peck through it. They're landing on the net physically and pecking through it. They had the right concept, just not the right follow through. The execution was lacking. Now, if they would have went back farther away, X amount of inches from the siding, depending on the species, beak's going to be longer, etc. If they would have had some sort of spacer on their anchor points going around, it would have worked. Downside to that, you get squirrels, tree limbs, the ball, whatever, depending on how low to the ground it is, kids and other animals will mess it up. Takes a long time, not as visually pleasing either. Same thing like metal. I love metal. Metal stops majority of everything from entering side structures, which is why we utilize metal in our companies. Long-lasting, effective, visually pleasing, closing large holes and gaps. It's more of a replacement issue unless you have a large span going along where you just need to block it off. I mean, you can use a multitude of things. That's typically for birds entering an already existing hole, though. That's not for woodpeckers. Like, you'd have to replace the siding with metal siding or wrap that fascia board like we saw in a few slides ago with a piece of metal. Not only are you taking care of the ability for the woodpecker to peck on it, you're also taking care of the underlying issue, which is carpenter bees. If you wrap it in metal, carpenter bee can't chew through the wood. 2 problems solved right there. But again, realistic expectations in writing for your clients. Can they still peck on it, make noise? Of course. So another deterrent type, visuals. I've used these in the past. Scare spider, you can find them in Halloween stores. You can buy them online, wildlife control supplies, all the different bird companies. They all carry them. The good part is they're fairly cheap. It's noise activated on pillars and posts going straight vertical. Great. Awesome. Large siding areas spanning 30, 40, 50 feet. You would need a lot of those. It looks pretty cheesy. If it's not around Halloween time in the large span spots, I probably would not suggest it to my clients. But again, for smaller poles, pillars, posts, things like that, great. You need one for each side, though, because they can only see what's going on as far as they can see. Especially spots where, let's say, a holographic visual deterrent will not get enough sunlight in that spot. These would be a good add-on for some particular spots. Now, it also depends on how you approach this visual concept to a client. They see this, some are going to think they got scammed. I just spent this much money on a mechanical spider. I've heard it before, which is why only certain jobs do I install these. And you got to change the batteries out. But if you already have a woodpecker program set up where you're coming out X amount of times a quarter or a year, whatever it is, whatever you've set your program to be, could be fine. You're going to be there anyways, maintaining whatever you need to maintenance, upkeeping, if it will. Another visual deterrent type, optigel discs. So for the optigel discs, as you can see in the photograph, where the primary nesting hole is, you can see the feather of either a downy or a hairy woodpecker right below it. Indicates that he's been hanging out in that spot. Downside to it, you can see it's sticky. leaves, debris, crap in the air. The plus side to that is that you don't have to leave them up indefinitely. You can take them down. So be mindful of where you're putting them. Keep them out of reach of kids and pets. Um, some states and regions dictate that you have to have a pest control license to install these because it is a chemical compound, albeit that it's a visual thing. You're not spraying a pesticide or a poison. Depending on the wording for your area is going to dictate who can install these legally. Information on the product. They do smell like garlic if you have these things inside of your truck. Try to keep them in its own separate. They come in a big box, small or big box, depending on how many you order. I try to keep mine in a Ziploc type container because they will stink up the bed or the cab of a vehicle. Visual deterrent types, intimidators, 4-part holographic, top and bottom spin independently of one another. Just got the patent finally issued after many years. The cons on this is that I've had some up for 3-4 years. They've been fine. And clients still like them. They don't want to take them down. They're still working and operating. I was amazed. Some other clients, nope, okay, woodpeckers are going to take them down. And that's part of the program. Well, I just got the deterrent back. I can utilize it on another person's structure. Sunlight, they need sunlight. Now, the spinning and the light noise that they make sometimes is enough to get them out on very cloudy days. But if you have persistent buggers and you're having a series of cloudy days, you want to use them in conjunction with other things, such as the OptiGel discs, sealing of the holes, obviously, scare spiders, what have you. Having multiple things in your arsenal at once, that way, let's say you do get a day or two of cloudiness. It's still doing its job to its effective means, but now it's being backed up and helped by another form of deterrent. So visual deterrent types, the effigies. Pretty sure if you've been in this industry for a long amount of time, you've seen, perhaps you've placed some of these effigies up as well. Whether it be the owls, coyotes, snakes, hawks, whatever it is. Some of the ones where the head bobbles, shifts, and moves. Just like with anything, how you convey the message to your client and the products you are using and implementing in your programs is going to dictate the results that you end up with. If you're just putting this fake owl out there, charging a couple $100, you can see in the photograph, it got complacent to the owl being there. It's not scared of it. It made a hole right in the center and ended up nesting inside of it. They could have chose anywhere along the structure. They chose to peck right through the thing. Obviously, they're not afraid of it. Now, did that individual or company move it around? Obviously, no. I try to steer clear of it. Anything that's readily available and it's a stationary product that doesn't have some sort of moving parts or visual stimulation that changes, typically they're not going to be as afraid of it. If that thing was moving constantly, they'd probably be more afraid of it. If that thing changed, instead of just moving like this, if that thing changed, 1 minute it's doing this, next minute it's doing this, that's more scary because it's erratic. I don't know what to expect from it. But something that's stationary, it's stationary. As you can see in the photos here, effigies. This one was at a client's house. Obviously did not work. This one that we're going to talk about momentarily is a completely separate type of effigy. It's not for scaring. it bases the theory off of territorial dominance. I've made several prototypes throughout the years and have had pretty good success depending on what type it is, where it's installed. This particular area is a bat house we created and installed for a client X amount of time ago. Bats were moving in. The whole thing's made out of cedar. Woodpeckers started pecking on it. And you go, well, can't put opti discs on there. Not for the bats. You want to get bats stuck to the optis. That ain't going to happen. So that idea's out. Visual deterrence. Stuff floating, flapping around the wind. What if a bat comes out, gets smacked on the ground, not doing right by the bat, and it's going to possibly vibrate that post a little bit as well. That's not good for the bats. They're not going to want to stay in there. So I need something stationary that's going to tell the woodpeckers to go away. So we created, and you can make similar things like that. This one's mimicking, obviously, a pileated woodpecker based on territorial dominance. I always ask, I show my clients what I'm going to be installing prior to installing it, so they're not going, oh, I can't have this here. You know, so-and-so that lives in here doesn't want to see that. So that's why I have several different things in my arsenals for installing, whether it's, you know, visual or physical, to be able to say, here's what I'm proposing. Here's photographs of it. And it worked in these scenarios. Now, this certain scenario, similar to the bat house scenario, was not an everyday occurrence. So this territorial dominance visual still has, in my eyes, limited field use before it should go out in the market. It's only been out for a couple years, and it's only been tested on several handfuls of places. So I've been talking about it for quite some time. Setting up a woodpecker program. What does that mean? Our time frame are 3 months. I know people that it's 1 month. I know people that it's a year. How much time are you willing to give it? Now, I figure within a 3-month time frame, whether it's a newer issue that's only been going on for a couple weeks, or it's been an ongoing issue for years, within 3 months, I should be able to do my job in 1, maybe 1.5. I'm going to give it 3 just for sake of argument. So let's just say I'm charging X amount per deterrent installed, and then you charge another X amount for the holes or areas patched or preventative maintenance that we seal up the structure and fix the underlying problems, being the holes as well. I'm taking that in that with everything line itemized, everything I do, those areas that I set these deterrents on and I patch these holes on are covered under that 3-month program. It's warranted. After said 3 months, because I use a lot of visual deterrents, that sun's shifting position in the sky, it's not hitting the same areas when we originally installed it as they are now. Winter to spring, spring to summer, summer to fall, et cetera, et cetera. That's why I do my 3 months, because every 3 months it's drastically changed. That sun in the sky is drastically changed. The leaves on the trees surrounding, the shadows casted from the trees and from the other structures nearby are not the same as they were 3 months ago. That's why mine is 3 months. Now, again, within the first month and a half, it's great. We'll call up with the client and say, have you been experiencing any place else? Wherever I told them that this is going to be a non-issue, we come out for free. And if we got to change stuff or patch another hole, but I want to follow up with the client, and I want to know exactly what's going on. Because if they just moved them to the other side of the structure, well, now let's address that before it becomes a big issue. And let's try to get them out of here. But if what I did on that one side of the structure worked, great. Now either way, you want to keep the client for life, and you want them to hand your name out to their friends, family, and neighbors. Written and verbal expectations. just like I discussed. Does it cover all sides of the structure? No. It's wherever I put it up. Just like you bring a car into a mechanic, you only want to get one tire and brake fixed. The mechanic's only going to cover that one tire and that one brake pad on the front right of the car. He's not going to cover all four because he didn't want to do all four. Did I write you up for all four sides of the house? Yeah. You only want to take care of the main issue and you don't want to be proactive with it. I did my due diligence as service provider. It's in writing as well, so I can go back at a later date. Well, told you so. Now we got to add a couple more, because as a preventative, I would only needed to put 2 or 3 on that side in these areas during this season. Flash forward X amount of months later, maybe a year, what have you. Now, they did a bunch of damage to XYZ on this side and the southwest side. So now we got to come back out, reassess. And it's going to be considerably much more. Why? Because there wasn't damage before. Now there is. Here's a line item for this at this time juncture. And I'm going to need more deterrence. And now, do you want to be proactive with doing these other sides? Let them decide. Proper installation of the visual holographic deterrents, always above. I see people with the holes right here, and they want to put the deterrent right next to it or below it because maybe their ladder doesn't reach, whatever the reason is. It's not going to be as scary to them if something radically is moving underneath you. You're up here. You're fine. Think like the bird. I'm going to be attacked by an aerial attack, more so an attack on the ground. So if it's above my head, I'm constantly looking up, being like, is that thing, why does it keep moving? And what's this beams of light, laser deal, light show going on? It's scaring me. I'm getting out of here. Compared to below me, oh, that's down there. It ain't coming up. That ain't scary. Think about where the sunlight's refracting. If it's hitting on this side, it's going to bounce back over here. Think about how the sun's moving. All these different things. You can look on YouTube for similar thing I'm telling you right now, where I recorded for proper placement of things, and I give some demonstrations. So just like here, all the different types of structures. How is this angled? Now I also got some that you can't see in the photo in this middle one here, where I have some over here and over here. You can see the tree in the middle. So I had to go on the wood down here. It's still above. Here we have some going up the peaks. You can see the sunlight refracting off of it. So this one at the very peak is hitting here to here as it moves. And then the ones lower here and here are covering all this other territory. You can see this house kind of looks like a face. So these ones are hitting all the mouth areas. This one's hitting above the forehead spot. This smaller house here, again, lots of angles because of the porch. That was the primary spot that they were. But we're making sure to get here, and this whole dark area underneath is still hitting here. But you want to keep it out of windows as well. Some commercial properties with that EFIS, drive it, repair the EFIS, drive it, have them going along. You can attach them to magnets, you can attach them to whatever, so I'm not having to drill into the client's parapet wall. Same thing with chimneys, top corners. That way, as this sun moves in the sky, I'm getting that hit on all the sides and on the peak of the house here, just from these 2 deterrents. But I had to get a 36 or 40 foot ladder to reach it. Same thing on rounded structures. You got to think about how that sun shifts positions, what type of tree branches are in the way. You get another line item for trimming some of these tree branches as well. It's more money in your business's pockets, and you're taking care of your clients' underlying issues. These deterrents placed at the peak of this chimney, you could not get a boom lift into that spot. You'll see in another photo. Be mindful of where you install, especially being in the cities here. It's going to be neighboring houses right through the windows. Every once in a while, you'll have to come back out to move the deterrents in different spots, displace them differently, because they will be going inside people's windows. I'll keep that in mind. Here's the after photo of when we replaced the siding for this client. You can remember at the beginning of this talk, all that was messed up. We replaced the trim boards, the siding, etc. Wasn't fun. But again, what did I do that the original person that installed it did not do is put some Tyvek behind it too. That way it's not going to be as susceptible to rot from the inside out. If there is an issue in the future, it will be taken care of. That cap on the top is also repainted, give it a little more longevity. So knowing your limits, physical abilities. Are you going to warranty? If you're going to warranty something up here on the very top, you can see how we had to access that in the wintertime, mind you. If they have an issue, you're going to have to come back and set up like that to get to it. So if you're coming back and setting up like that to get to it, even twice, the line items just for installation of deterrents and or patching holes or whatever it is going to be significantly higher than something I can reach with a 16-foot ladder on the side of a simple house or a log cabin. That's going to be 10 times higher at least. Price is going to affect it. Damage repairs. So again, knowing what you're comfortable with tackling and not tackling. Are you able to replace siding in your area? Does it require special permit or license? Do you got guys on staff that can help you do that? Damage repairs with metal. This is the same area that got patched over with metal where all the carpenter bees were. This is a hole. We had to have some sort of backer. So we put up 2x backer. So we had something to screw the metal into on the other side. But you can see how large this hole is right next to it. At one point in time, the clients also had hornet's nests inside of there. Not as visually pleasing unless you blend it. You can use some blending techniques to go over the metal. I like metal because they're not going to peck through again. They're going to have to go somewhere else. Hopefully they peck and go, oh crap, that's not wood, and want to get out of there. So depending on the techniques, you can make it blend in and look better. Fillers, patches, Bondo, epoxies. I believe this one was an epoxy, as you can see in the first picture. Here's a good size hole. This is what it looked like closer up. It was a nesting cavity. We got rid of them. Put in this backer. Put in some epoxy wood filler. You can barely even tell, especially from the ground. And this is only from 2 feet away. You can barely tell. You don't have to know and have woodworking skills. If it's smaller patches like this and the client's fine with it, you can do that and still make money on your line item. All other helpful suggestion add-ons, not only sealing up the areas, installing deterrents, making the client happy, provide them with alternative housing nearby, woodpecker bongos, suet feed, like we were discussing before in these photos, or some other jobs where we got our tree climbers on, installed some nesting boxes, just like installing a bat house. Realistic expectations for something like this. Are they going to utilize it? I can't tell you with 100% certainty. Same with people that want to install bat houses. I could do everything right. I could set it on the correct side of the tree or the structure that it's going on. It can be X amount of feet above. It could be the right color, the right wood. Everything could be correct. If that wild animal doesn't want to go there, that wild animal's not going to go there. It could be 2 years until you see him utilizing anything. So it all depends. Other animals. So with the other animals that move in, holes that are created by woodpeckers, this right here is a starling. Got a call for woodpeckers to come out. This is where identifying becomes key. And if you don't already have the background experience, if you haven't already taken courses, if you haven't already been dabbling in the wildlife field for quite some time and you don't know your species common native to your area, what's going to move in, what's not, what's the telltale signs. If you can see within 2 seconds of a bird flying away what type of bird that is, what type of nesting cavity it's inside, I highly suggest that you educate yourself further by doing that. Like Cornell University Lab of Ornithology, obviously NACOA has its own bird course that teaches you these different species, how they move. This bottom photo now is where it got started by woodpeckers and then the squirrels slowly moved in. So the squirrels moved in, you can see the insulation strewn about, you can see the chew marks on the fascia and on the tube eyes behind it. Knowing what to expect when you're up there, how to convey these messages to your clients are going to make you seem more professional to them. A couple final thoughts. Listen to the client. Even if you don't fully agree with what they're saying, sometimes it's not the best advice, but at least putting it out there. Don't always presume that it's just the woodpecker or it's just whatever it is. Could be a multitude. You know, if you're able to go out there, I'll just slap up some deterrents, make a couple $100, be on my way. You go about it that way. Probably the better way to go about it might be take the time and assess. You're getting paid for an assessment fee to let the client know what you know. Give them a little taste of the information. You don't have to give it all to them, just a taste of it. Now, your line items for these things, whether it's replacement of the wood, patching, installation deterrents, is there any other underlying issues? Do those tree limbs need to be cut back? Is that part of your business profile to do that? Or is that just a helpful suggestion and hint that you are going to give to your client that they need to do or find a tree company to do? Depending on the size of the tree and the limbs, we may or may not take that on. It all depends. Further educating yourself with the exterior building components. EIFS is a big pain. It's a nightmare. If you haven't done the drive it, where it's just foam board with a stucco facade over, you're in for a treat. Trying to attach anything, again, higher is better, but trying to attach any deterrents to these types of substrates prove to be difficult. They will fall out. You don't want something to fall and potentially hurt someone near underneath and nearby. Attaching of those substrates relatively easy. Making it blend in and look professional, that's harder. Being able to obtain the right materials. Are you in a mountainous region area where they use poplar tree bark siding? Trying to obtain a pallet of that, and you have to buy it by the pallet, is very expensive, and you're typically on a 1-year waiting list. Now, if that client does happen to have a odd piece of substrate or siding like the poplar tree bark, chances are they'll have some extra backup in their garage or something, but don't always count on it. So if you're bidding something out to replacement and that client wants the same exact thing to replace, know if you can get that, if it's readily available, or if they happen to have some that you can utilize, and know the price points on it as well before you start getting too involved in replacement of things. If you can't tackle that certain project, don't be afraid to hand it out to a fellow operator in your area. Safety first. Talking and speaking about safety, let me go back to one of these photos where you can see my technician is fully geared up with the spikes on their boots and the harness and everything correct to do that job, just to install that. And all that equipment is not cheap. It's not free. So don't underbid yourself when you're doing this line of work. People will say, oh, put up a bongo, put up a birdhouse, put up whatever. and then they see the line item on there. You have to explain to them why. Being able to have photographic evidence as to why helps as well. Or, hey, look it up. It costs this much. You want to go up to the top of that metal roof and replace all that D-log siding. What's behind it? How are you going to access that? Same with this chimney back here. How am I going to access? You can see how high the ladder reaches on the first photograph, to where we had to replace pieces of the siding up here, and then down here we had to use a separate ladder for it. It's on the side of a hill. All these small nuances you want to keep in the back of your head. Yes, it's just installing a simple deterrent, but is it the right spot? Is it the right place? How are you going to get access to that spot, to that place? Same with patching. That small patch, thankfully, was right towards the top where he's doing that work. And he's roped off, he's harnessed off, that ladder's not going anywhere. Just to get up to the spot to rig everything up is safe and secure. Nobody's going anywhere. So that line item was pretty hefty. But now if that was lower, we'd have to have a completely different game plan about how to tackle that job. It wouldn't be the same photograph. So trying to determine where they go, how you're going to put them up, the surrounding areas around them, it's going to greatly affect your bid process. It's going to greatly affect how you talk to the client. Once you're looking at it and you've been doing it for quite some time, now you're able to tackle, okay, you need this, you need that. I can give you a quote on the spot. Here you go. The first dozen or so times you do it, when I train others how to do it, I don't want them giving a quote directly on the spot. I want them to take their time to think about it. Is there anything else you missed? Did you take enough photographs all the way around this structure? If this was here and they didn't see it, now you just cost the company at least a couple hundred, if not thousands of dollars. We didn't even let the client know that was an issue there. We didn't even give them a price to handle this particular area. So you're going to have to be thinking about that before you put your line items and give your quote. Same thing with if that's cedar shake roof on the photograph on the left, how are you going to get all the way up to the top when there's a hill and a stairwell right here? How are you going to get up to that spot? If a ladder wouldn't allow you access, you'd have to climb on top of that. Are you capable? Do you have people capable of doing that? This commercial building here, if that wouldn't have been ferrous metal to attach a magnet to, is that client cool with you putting screws into the facade of that? Is that screw going to hold because it's ephes behind there? Or is there enough of that 2x framework behind it to hold it intact of just a screw? All the different nuances of where to put stuff, how to put stuff, how to properly do your initial inspection, so you can give the client a better understanding and better bang for their buck, so to speak. Thank you for attending. Appreciate it. If anybody has any questions or need help with creating programs or figuring out how to access places on a structure, feel free to send me an email and we can discuss further.